I'm Andrew Huberman, and I'm a professor of neurobiology and ophthalmology at Stanford School of Medicine. Today we are discussing skin health. Anytime we're talking about the immune system or skin, we need to take into account the gut microbiome and nutrition. So many people asked, what are the things that they should eat to have healthy appearing youthful skin? They also asked, what are the things that one eats that could exacerbate things like acne? And what can one eat in order to reduce their acne? So let's just start off with the basics. And here I'm going to be fairly brief because I think we all know the big take-home message about nutrition nowadays. We hear over and over again, and we should pay attention to the fact that the vast majority of our food, well, I should say, if one desires to be healthy, mentally healthy, physically healthy, and a high-performing individual in any number of different things, cognitive, physical, or otherwise, we want to consume the vast majority of our foods from non-processed or minimally processed sources, so-called whole foods, so fruits, vegetables, if that's within your diet. Some people include grains, some people don't. I'm not here to discuss that. Meat, eggs, fish, chicken, and so forth, if that's within your diet plan or your nutrition, or if you're a vegetarian or vegan, you make the associated adjustment so that you can make sure you're getting enough protein and amino acids, but it's in keeping with your ethical and maybe your health goals. Okay, so we're not here to discuss vegan, vegetarian, omnivore, of which I am, or carnivore. Okay, that's not the discussion. I think all of those groups agree that getting the majority of your nutrition from non-processed or minimally processed foods is going to be best. And that, of course, if you're human, sometimes you'll ingest processed foods, but really trying to avoid highly processed foods is critical. You know, I mentioned earlier these advanced glycation end products. These are things that are present in a lot of processed foods like crackers and chips and things like that, that make those foods inflammatory. So you're getting the theme now. Inflammation is bad, not just for the skin, but for all organ systems of the body. It's not just about the high density of calories and the high density of taste present in highly processed foods. Those are problematic, but a lot of the issue with these highly processed foods is the high heat conditions used to make those foods stable on shelves or stable in packaging over time. Okay, so there's a whole discussion to be had here that frankly I don't think can be had enough, but that is outside the scope of today's episode. The point is that when these highly processed foods are basically made, right, they're constructed, they involve the interactions between sugars and proteins and fats at high heat that make them stable on the shelf or in packaging, and those can be very inflammatory. And that can show up in the form of reactive skin. It can make your psoriasis worse. Yes, it can make your acne worse. It can make your skin more tender and painful. It can make your skin basically more reactive to some of the underlying predispositions you might have, either because of genetics or other things you're doing or not doing. Maybe you're going through a particularly stressful time. Maybe you're getting a little bit of extra sun and you're eating more highly processed foods, and those things are combining and making your skin break out or flush more than it would ordinarily. Again, there's so many reasons to eat most of your foods from non-processed or minimally processed sources. And of course, and now I sound like a broken record because you can hear this all over the internet, ingesting foods that are excessively high in sugar, excessively high in sugars combined with fats, just not good to do. Pro-inflammatory, it's going to cause all sorts of issues. And we're going to get into this more as it relates to acne in particular, because as you probably know, when you ingest foods that are high in sugars or even just carbohydrates generally that also contain a lot of fats, and in particular when those foods are highly processed, well, then you initiate an inflammatory response, and you often can initiate additional things happening in the pores of cells that can start to really aggravate acne and cause more acne. Now, with respect to the specific foods that can improve skin appearance and skin health, it's very clear that diets that are of the so-called low inflammatory type, that don't spark inflammation, so these would be things that sometimes are referred to as the Mediterranean diet or a paleo-like diet. You hear these terms, but what are we really talking about? Mostly whole foods, minimally processed foods, okay? And then there's variation depending on whether or not you emphasize or de-emphasize meat and fish, or emphasize or de-emphasize vegetables, this kind of thing. Again, I'm an omnivore. I love fruit. I love vegetables. I do like rice, oatmeal, and some pastas. I like a great sourdough bread. I like butter. I like olive oil. I like meat. I like fish. I think I am representative of most people out there because I eat most all those things, but I also eat the occasional croissant. I also eat the occasional slice of pizza. I don't eat a lot of that stuff, but I eat it now and again. And then, of course, you have people that are super strict. What do we know about the relationship between specific foods and skin health and skin appearance? Well, anti-inflammatory diet. We've more or less spelled out what that represents without getting into too many specifics. And then there are the specific components within foods, so vitamins, minerals, and micronutrients, as well as things like collagen present in bone broth that can be really useful to include. So one of the, I think, best accounts on dermatologic health and skin health and appearance on the internet is Dr. Andrea Suarez. She's a medical doctor, board-certified dermatologist, and she has a wonderful video that describes the various foods that one can eat to promote skin health and skin appearance. And rather than repeat that entire video, because A, that wouldn't be right, and B, it already exists out there in excellent form, I'll just give a brief synopsis of some of the things that she suggests, because I entirely agree, and again, there's no need to be repetitive. And she does an excellent job. So she certainly mentions collagen and bone broth. She also mentions various sources of omega fatty acids that are often lacking in people's diets that they should pay extra careful attention to get. So things like walnuts, flax, fatty fish. I personally am a big believer in supplementing with liquid form fish oil. That's what I do. Why am I a big believer in that? Well, I don't tend to cook much fatty fish. I love the taste of it if it's prepared right, but I don't tend to do that very often. So I use a liquid form fish oil or capsules, but the liquid form is generally more affordable. This was discussed in an episode that I did with Dr. Rhonda Patrick, so we can put a link to that particular segment in the show note captions. It's also suggested that we eat a lot of leafy greens, so dark leafy greens. You're probably noticing a lot of these recommendations are kind of typical for what people describe anytime they're talking about nutrition for health. She highly recommends people get enough folic acid for the role that folic acid plays in DNA synthesis and repair of skin cells, as among other cells, and cell proliferation. And of course, we should get our colored fruits and veggies, so our oranges, our strawberries. The reds and oranges are critical out there. And she also highlights something very important that I want to reiterate, which is that we have a critical need for vitamin A for our skin health. And this was covered, albeit through the lens of exploring the pharmacology of tretinoin and those retin A compounds. But vitamin A is crucial for a number of different processes within the cell types that make up skin. She appropriately cautions against supplementing with vitamin A because it's a fat-soluble vitamin. It's very easy to overdose vitamin A if one is supplementing with too much of it. She recommends rather getting enough vitamin A from things like oranges, carrots, sweet potatoes. She recommends as much berry intake as is appropriate for someone and one can afford. The berries are so delicious, but they tend to be expensive depending on time of year. Ingesting things like garlic, because garlic has sulfur, which is key for collagen synthesis and repair. And she talks about the critical role of taurine. Anyway, she does such a terrific job of describing the nutrition for skin health and skin appearance. Those are just a few of the highlights. So again, without doing a deep dive into nutrition, decide whether or not you're going to be vegan, vegetarian, omnivore, or carnivore, and then make sure that you're getting enough of the vitamins and minerals and micronutrients from your foods or supplement if necessary. But note that caution about vitamin A supplementation in excess. And also make sure you're avoiding excessive amounts of highly processed foods.
Thanks for watching. If you found this information helpful, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more health and wellness tips.